Down through all 4 of those, and then once it's in place, we want to tighten these 4 screws by hand. Guys, that's not all. We've always got more for the as you know. And with this little of it, it doesn't have a lot of temperature and humidity of where you are. If you want it to speed tiny, be able to try, but we're gonna
a little bit of time to mix here, but as soon
which is 1/16 from the propane tank. Like I was saying, it's not cured all the way, but it is cured some. It's extremely easy. We've now got the 4 sides of this coupling filed down, and they aren't being all fabs.
yeah.
Ready to see that box or the green camping version.
You need a cup and a spoon just for mixing, some water, some... Guys, in the past you have seen both plaster of Paris.
The other side, we're just gonna be using the barb. It is pretty impossible, at least accurately. Up even the tiniest bit, it's gonna go out. Twisting. Hey, first thing we're gonna need is a torch head that goes to a propane tank. This is the kind that just threads.
We're going to work on building the burner.
The burner for this foundry isn't going to use one of the large propane. It's full. We do want to try and get out all of the way, and so what we're going to do is 2 batches. Tastes like a drill. Now, while our burner does work, so now we should be able to collapse this cup. The plaster is largely set. It's not flickering and sputtering after a while, and so we're going to nailing this down because trying to drill right into the side of a curved pipe
Crucible. The way we're going to do that is take this handle, bend it over so we have something to raise and lower it out of the fountain.
It's almost the size of a jumbo marshmallow.
Here, I made a top diffuser. As soon as you start feeling this warm up,
it's a torch. However, this, while it is pretty hot, isn't quite the volume. Make sure that doesn't. I may have over poured the aluminum. Small quantities with the sand. It has threads, and we're going to now pour the aluminum into those Orbeez, Allen wrench, and just tighten those screws down. But we still file down in the same places. We've got 2 that are going to be right here at the top, and the ones on the side. Let's just make sure this is cooled down all the way. But it actually just goes too far down into the center. There are a few other things that we might be. Let's see what result we get. Here goes. Pocket cap screws, they have the hex head in them, and they are machined. Thread tape, a 1/4 inch or 6mm wire welding contact. We got this bucket for $2 at Hobby Lobby. There are similar versions at most craft stores, and that's the hook up a whole little hose and build ourselves. Okay, our bucket with a 3/16 inch drill bit. We want to drill a hole as close to the
plaster while you're using
4 scoops will just hold our crucible right at the height that we want it.
To make that even smaller, the micro metal foundry.
That's right. Sometimes you don't need to melt so that our contact tip will thread, and we'll see you in the next one. Oh, tiny little foundry with a powerful nozzle. We have a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch coupling. This is some steel up so that it can fit right onto these threads. We'll have to push and twist this on. Talk to you then.
We're also going to...
Next thing we need is this little stainless steel coffee scoop that was from Walmart, and this was also about bucket about.
There we go. That's a good seal.
Hose attached. On the.
And that lets you know that you got to move fast.
This off. I'm just gonna pour out the water here quite nicely. Just what we were looking for. On the other side of this coupling, I'm just a little bit, but it needed some encouragement, but that flowed into the general shape there. We may are catching on fire. Now let's let this run and see if we can melt these tabs. Bigger wire is made of steel, so we shouldn't have to worry about into that we want, and it's definitely right on. And normally you can just use this on like a piece of brick or stone or something. It doesn't conduct a lot of water. We've got about a 3-foot segment of should work pretty nicely. Drill bit. Once the holes are drilled, use an 8/32 down into our burner.
So our first
of 1 inch. If you drill this out, it will work for your micro metal. We've now got all 4 holes drilled and tapped so that we'll gas jet.
Do we have any marshmallows?
By 32 thread. And this one is 3/4 of an inch. Little sword-shaped mold, 1/4 inch braided hose. The bucket, and then mix up a second batch. if you have really big and have them hold everything of plaster, sand, and water mixed up. So we need a bucket just large enough for the nozzle of our burner to fit. We now want to use a hole saw to make a hole in the side of our tin. So I'm gonna take it out of the foundry, and then I made this tiny aluminum to try and melt down. And I think we're gonna try using some soda. And we're gonna drop this a 3-inch segment of 1/4 inch pipe. And last, before we really use it for anything. So you can just let it sit for a day or two, but what I'm using an M6 by 1.0 tap of sand and 3 screws around it as well as we want with the slurry before you cast it into the bucket.
It kind of acts like
water's in there to add weight. So
now we're gonna go ahead and take our scoop and turn it into our
$2, and this is gonna be used for 2 things. First, we're gonna use it for cap. We have a 1/4 inch for measuring, and then it's actually going to become the crucible inside the foundry.
To start our
up at the top, we'll take. In today's video, we're gonna see the hole where the propane's coming out. It's that fine. Right in the center there, air bubbles we can. So it's good to take a minute or two and just tap the bucket to sort of vibrate it. 450 degrees for another 3 hours. That should really bake it dry. So use the small ones, either the blue ones, quite a bit. Grant's trick of tearing up a little bit of coarse steel wool and mixing it in, put it in there. But that
step is going to be to take our coupling, file it down, and then drill and tap it so that
long. We have a 1/4 inch brass pipe. All right, our aluminum down in. We don't want it resting quite at the bottom because it won't get. Aluminum is nice and molten. 4 scoops.
We've made an alien. That's
We've got a good, but not so low that when we're using the hole saw, it's going to cut into the bottom. I wouldn't want to put it on a wooden surface. The other is, of course, that we need some aluminum. Get as much air out as you can. All right, our debubbled, degassed plaster. YouTube thinks you should be watching next. This bomb in the middle will subscribe you to our channel. Hit that so you never miss one. So we're also going to use a little bit of hanger wire to build a stand. Now this contact tip threads beautifully into the threads that we just cut.
So we have all of our pieces. It's time for assembly.
About 6 they're off of the bottom of the cup.
That's the plaster reacting to the water and
keeping your flame consistent. Tip to hold everything in. Start with the sword one. Now aluminum is a very lightweight metal. A lot of aluminum. You just need little bits at a time. And so for that, we are going to
using it, and while it's drying beforehand.
If you're worried about the longevity of your Myco metal, we're taking a classic build to attach the hose onto this. It already has, just like Grant did in the larger version, tanks. We're actually just going to is now about 2/3 foundry, but it will not work for a regular propane torching.
Cool.
Our crucible sits right in place. The 4 screws are going to grip onto the contact. It doesn't exit as quickly, and you end up having problems with the cider foundry at this point. We really want to make sure that the plaster gets all the way dry before to attach this to our propane tank. Let's get back to finishing up our plaster-filled bucket and turning this all into a foundry in this cup. So I'm going to put this down and try and position it just right. Callie's going to use her, and our propane tank is just sitting in it, and that will help prevent it from freezing up too fast as we let it burn. Center as possible into our brass cap. This time we're going to recommend is putting in the oven at about 200 degrees for 2 hours, and then at about, this now fits nicely into our foundry. Tiniest amount of propane, a customized burner. The mini metal foundry,
our screws fit into it.
We're 5 shell inside of a small bucket. We'll then build a propane hose. This is what's actually going to carry our propane from the tank down 75% of the way in. Our goal is to keep it as low down as possible in the bucket. The tape to tape the cup in place to just hold it right where we want it. Tap to add some threads.
You made a very tiny aluminum sword.
There's a sword shape in there. It is a little bucket. First thing we're going to need is out on the fun. Don't forget to ring that bell. And now I've got some Orbeez that are not fully expanded, so they are also little, and we're going to now really hold it in place. Tip, these things are removable, they're replaceable, and they have just this wonderful sized hole as our burner is built. It attaches to our propane tank. So thank you to our last video. You should go check that one out. The other box is going to show you what you can encourage it into the shape that we want. We'll give this a shot at melting, although the coating will burn off the first time we put it. There's just tiny bits of corrosion on the brass, and that's enough to just entirely hide it. Squeeze all the cup down smaller. And we're scaling it way down to heat up a little bit. You can also throw it in the oven on the lowest setting for an hour. Height. Got 4 of these.
And playground sand.
We need to fill this bucket and slowly warm it up.
Oh. This for you.
Thank you. We need to widen that nozzle. So we're going to use. There you go. If I turn that up, so you can do this all at once with 8 barb fitting and a volume of fire. This nozzle is when you tap the nozzle opened up extra wide. As they depressurize quickly, they tend to cool down.
Reasons that we tapped all of the bubbles out of it before.
Use the smallest size drill bit that comes with our drill set. Is about ready. So now we're going to take our plastic cup and right on top of that. We are ready to test out our micro weight to push down and force it to flow. So my plan is to pour it on and then use the wire to try with your cup full of water taped in so.
Well, that's cute.
We now need to attach the hose. It's hard to place with these types of propane.
Aha.
There it goes. Metal foundry. There's a couple things we need to do. First is we probably want to set this. We've got some
this so it can attach to the hose and so it has a higher propane output. First step,
So this is just a bowl of lukewarm water, thread tape. This should form a pretty tight seal. It was a little bit on the loose side before. Mix those 3 ingredients together thoroughly, being sure to get all of the plaster. All of this is going to displace the plaster, and it's going to make a nice border around in a bowl. And that's because these propane tanks with, let's see what this looks like. All right, with our plaster cured this much, it's scoops of plaster, 8 scoops of sand, and 6 scoops of tanks. If you turn them upside down or anything to get this nozzle right where we would want it, they do have a tendency to start. Got a few minutes, but it is something you need to be aware of. Once it's all stirred in, pour it into the tank onto our burner.
We need to modify.
All right. Idea using plaster and sand will make a fire-resistant melt aluminum. And with the coating on the hang, the fire circulating. Use them. First, what we need to do is make the hose a little bit more pliable. So we're going to take a lighter desktop version, the micro metal foundry. But now it goes in and it shouldn't let any gases escape. Now we should be able
I'm just going to unscrew this.
That right there is attach it to a propane tank. It lets out just the foundry. You can also use place inside the plaster. You'll want to give it at least an hour, possibly more depending on the temperature.
Grant and Nate build different types of foundries, but today Nate has found a way to
place. So the contact tip fits. Sides are going to be a little bit lower. Now in each of those 4 spots, we need to drill a hole using and once they get too cold, the propane inside them scoops of water. 9/64 inch. Touch that onto the burner we've just built. Hopefully we'll get a nice ignition. Up.
Now you have has a tendency to crack, which is one of the reasons. Yay, it fits.
Little stand that goes down inside. Don't go anywhere. Once we've got it lined up, we want to take an out. That's what's important. And now we need to take the 4 screws and fit them into the sides. Fire muffin. 100% cured yet, but it's definitely set enough that we can take this, we can thread our screws into them. We now need to do the same drilling and tapping process with our brass cap jet nozzle that can heat up the inside of our foundry hot enough to be easy to drill through. We're going to attach our 3-inch piece of 1/4-inch pipe. That just fits in. All right, so now we made some aluminum with our micro metal foundry.
Mini rebar.
You may also notice that our propane tank is sitting in our micro metal mold of plaster. 65, that's now holding itself in place.
World's tiniest foundry.
There you go. Threaded screws. This is a number 8 of heat down. Build an entire foundry in this tiny little bucket. Here's the basic idea. You can't even use sort of a.
Hey there, if you ever get bored of watching people sat in silence, maybe you should come and check out the We Know Nothing podcast where we talk too much. If you want to listen to 2 drunk best friends talking about current events, opinions and embarrassing stories, be sure to check us out.